So what exactly is science? I think a definition the majority of us can agree with is that science is a search for truth and answers. But science isn't the only way that we search for truth and answers. We have other methods too. For instance, religion. Religion as well is the search for truth and answers. But if both science and religion are the search for truth and answers, what is the difference between the two? Religion is a search for answers in trust, a search for answers in faith. Things that cannot be proven or disproven must be taken on faith. Science, on the other hand, is the search for truth and answers in dissent, in mistrust. And we know this because we have something called the scientific method. The scientific method is simple. You come up with a theory, and then you do experiments to test this theory. Those tests on your theory are essentially about distrusting your theory. You come up with a theory, you must immediately try to break your theory. And only after you've exhausted all methods and all experiments that you could possibly do to break your theory can it be considered science and any semblance of truth or answers. Now, there is an overlap there between there's an overlap between religion and science. There was a time where religion ruled our world. And then over time, we became more intellectual, we discovered more things, and it became science because we learned of methods to test things. So when religion ruled the world, we didn't have the scientific method. But the scientific method is all about applying experimentation. And there are things you still cannot do that to. There wasn't a time back in the day where we could test the idea of our heliocentric universe. So people who went against the order of the Earth-centric universe were burned at the stake. They were put on trial and they were executed for corrupting our youth. And then, of course, eventually we developed the tools to apply science to that. So religion exists where the science doesn't, where the scientific method doesn't. Things you cannot test. For instance, there are no tests, there is no experiments you can do to prove or disprove the existence of God. So why do people believe in God? How can you believe in God? Well, people take it on faith. They trust that God exists. And you don't have to be religious to have religious beliefs. So, for instance, let's take Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an atheist. He does not conform to any religion, but he does have religious beliefs. For instance, he believes that the world is in a simulation. He believes we live in a simulation, in the Matrix, whatever you want to call it. Where does he get this belief from? There's no scientific method he can apply to test this, at least not yet. And so, for now, his belief in the simulation in the Matrix is a religious belief. It is not a scientific belief because a scientific method cannot be applied to it. So, when someone says something like, trust the science, are they making a religious argument? Because it's clear they're not making a scientific argument because science is based on mistrust. It's based on dissent. It's based around going against the orthodoxy. So when someone says trust the science, is that a religious belief? Many would say yes. I would say no. Because as I said before, religion exists in the place where the scientific method does not. But when you say trust the science, you are saying to ignore the scientific method. You are actually saying to ignore a large portion of the science, generally the science that goes against your orthodoxy. That is not religion because the scientific method can be applied. The ignoring dissent is not science, nor is it religion. It is actually cultish behavior. Yes, there was a time when religions showed cultish behavior. There are many religions today that still show cultish behavior. But the majority of modern religions have advanced and grown up with the time. They have embraced science to a certain degree, and they have understood that many of the answers that they were answering were answered through science. Things like the heliocentric universe. There aren't many religions that still believe that the earth is the center of the universe. There aren't many religions that still believe that the earth is only 5,000 years old. So they have given up that field of expertise to science. But now religion no longer runs the world. Science runs the world now. Science is the orthodoxy. And when you're saying to go against the orthodoxy, that is cultish behavior. Now, just as you don't have to be religious to have religious beliefs, you don't have to be scientific to have scientific beliefs. You don't have to be a scientist. And you can see how you use dissent to come up with your decisions very easily. In a previous video, I talked about capitalism. Like capitalism, religion and science is not inherently good or evil. It is a tool. Science is the tool that we use to rationalize our ethical decisions. Religion is the tool we use to rationalize our moral decisions. There is a difference between ethics and morals. There are, of course, some overlaps because there are overlaps with science and religion in general. But let's say you wanted to buy a product on Amazon. Let's call it a pair of shoes. You don't know what pair of shoes you want. You're not walking into a store. But let's say you were walking to a store. Same thing. You're going to try out 5 pairs of shoes, let's say. You're going to test them all. You're going to compare them against each other. Which ones look the best? Which one looks the best on you? Which one is the most comfortable? Your use cases, things like that. And you will make a discriminating decision based on which one is best for you. That is an ethical decision. And that is based on science because you did tests there. It's all about dissent. Look at review scores on Amazon. Let's say review scores for Airbnb, review scores on Yelp for a restaurant. You're not going to care that much about the 5-star reviews. They're not that important. What is most important are the dissenting reviews, the 1-star reviews. You want to know if you go to an Airbnb, will you find a crack pipe under the sink? You want to know if you go to a restaurant, is there a danger you're going to find a cockroach crawling around in your salad? The dissent is more important. A restaurant can have 100 5-star reviews, but that doesn't matter. What's most important is that single 1-star review where the guy finds a cockroach in the salad. That's what's important. The dissent is most important. And what's sad to me today is how so many scientists have completely abandoned the scientific method in favor of trust the science. And I spoke earlier about the heliocentric universe, astrophysics. Astrophysics at one time was part of religion. And going against the dissent of the earth-centric, I don't know what the term for that is. Earth, let's see, pangiocentric? I don't know. But if you went against orthodoxy, they burnt you at the stake for corrupting the minds of the youth. And there are famous people in the field of astrophysics whose names I will not mention, who say trust the science. And it's absolutely insane to me, coming from the field of astrophysics, which is known for burning heretics. You should know better. And I hope that one day these people will look at themselves in the mirror and say, oh my God, what have I done? I have abandoned my principles in favor of celebrity status. Will they ever come to that point? I hope so, but at this point I have my doubts. And there are people who claim to be on the side of science, but then they push out dissent. If you dissent from the modern orthodoxy, they will deplatform you. They will protest in front of your house. You will lose your job. You will be censored. You will lose your grants if you're a scientist at a college, at a publicly funded school. Your life will get destroyed. So if you don't go against the 97% consensus, which is a bullshit number that is created out of thin air and seems to keep on cropping up whenever they need to talk about trusting the science and science of consensus, and what do they say? They say science is settled. Science is never settled. It's always tested. So there are people who will say things like gender is on a spectrum, at the same time that they're supporting the religions which have not advanced with the times and embraced science. They'll say gender is on a spectrum while supporting a religion that would actively throw transgenders off a 4-story building to execute them. This is insane. These are two congruent ideals that cannot exist together. But why are they willing to have these two competing ideals? Because it's about consensus. And as long as these two ideals have consensus in the modern orthodoxy, they will defend it. Because that's how it works. You ever want to know what side that you would stand on in some of these conflicts? Would you stand with the state? Would you stand with the fascists? All you have to do is how they act in the face of dissent, or the face of going against the modern orthodoxy. Anyways, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted to talk about this week. I'm actually running out of major topics I want to talk about. I have a lot of other smaller topics, but I think I'm going to stick those in a rapid fire discussion where single topic, 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds, and then move to a next topic. So if there are any topics you want me to discuss, just let me know. Ask me in the comments, and I will try to get that in a future video. Anyways, peace out, guys. See you next week.